Hey, Belagan here. We're going to pick up our tutorial now. Previously we had made our grid that we're going to use as our template, and this time we're going to build a map on it. We're going to do just a kind of a generic tunnel going through a cave that's going to have a side door and a little pool. So the first things we need to do is build our floor. And all of these layers I'm going to do are going to be underneath the background layer, so that the grid that we created shows up on top of that. Start off with, I'm going to come to effects, render, clouds, and I use a lot of clouds for a lot of different type of effects. For this first step, we're going to want to make it pretty rough and turn the scale down a bit. So we've got kind of a lot of stuff going on with a lot of contrast in it. Once I have this, I'm going to come to effects, stylize, and emboss. And this is going to give it kind of a grainy floor pattern. It can change the angle to where it looks nice, where I'm happy with it, and then say OK. Now I like to give my floor tiles a little more distinction to help each square stand out a little bit more than just the grid. A lot of the grids I use, I'll have done a 3 pixel width instead of a 1. The 1 you can see, but when you're zoomed out, it does fade in a little bit. Let's label this as our floor. So I'm going to do something here to give each tile a little bit of its own flavor and stand out a little bit. So I'm going to come to a new layer, again, rendering more clouds. And for this effect, I want the roughness down and I want the scale larger. And once I have this, I'm going to come to distortion and we're going to pixelate this. And the pixelation size I'm going to use is 100 to match the size of each of these grid squares. And what that should do is generate a slightly different shade of gray for every square. And then I can come set that layer to multiply and play with the darkness to where it's not too dark, but everything kind of stands out. It looks decent right about there. Now I've got my floor tiles, and every tile again's got just a slightly different color, so they stand out, in addition to just the grid lines placed on top of them. Merge that layer down. Now we're going to start making our tunnels. Start off by making a layer, just making it straight black. Then we need to start generating some paths. To do that, I'm going to grab my eraser, and I want each path to be at least 5 feet wide that I'm going to make, so I'm going to use an eraser to a width of 100. And erasing on the tunnel layer, we're going to come through here and just start making a path that leads down this way. Make it slightly wider than just 1 pixel. And clear out an area over here for where a pool of water is going to be. We'll add in a little bit later. I want to have another tunnel branches off this over here. And this is going to loop up and lead to a lair. Have some monsters or something in here that the players can stumble on. So here's my basic layout for how this tunnel is going to work. Now the edges right now are just kind of done with the eraser. If I wanted to make those look a little bit more random, I can come into distortion and I'm going to use dense. And by default this is a little bit too much, so we're going to set the scale down some. Or maybe turn the refraction down but the scale up a little bit more. And just play with some of the settings in this until I'm happy with it. That looks good. So we'll say OK. I've got a few rogue elements that came off. Like right up here, I've got that one little blip that's not part of the wall. So I'm just gonna grab my eraser and just clean that up just a little bit. It's not real important. You don't have to do that, but it's gonna give the effect I want. Now, next thing I want to do is give the walls a little bit more distinction than just the black going straight onto the flooring. So there's a couple ways to do this. You can select your hallways, or you can do this step by selecting your cover. I'm going to select the hallways, and then I'm going to come onto selection. I'm going to outline my selection here. And I'm going to leave it white with 2 pixels. Now, if I'd done the black parts of my selection instead of the tunnels, I'd end up with a white bar at the bottom right side of the map. I'd have to go to delete. In this case, I only end up with an extra line down here at the bottom of the map where the tunnel exits. You have the same kind of artifact on the left side, but it's underneath the grid, so it doesn't really matter. So I got my white distinction added now. Now what I want to do is add a bit of a gray bevel to that. So with the same selection now, I've only got the tunnel selected and the white line is inside that selection. I'm going to come to Objects and use my Outline Objects. Again, I've got 2 different plugins. They do basically the same thing, but they've got a little bit different flexibility in their functions. Make this a little more of a gray, maybe a little bit whiter. Just gonna see if I can zoom in there. It's not gonna let me do that. Let's see. Let's go a hair darker, and then turn the strength down so it looks a little more like a blur. About like that works for me. Yeah, so everything's selected. Now if I zoom in on this, you can see it gives you a little more of effect on your walls. Now I have lost, there's a little bit of a gap in some spots between the white edge and the black, just because of the nature of the way that I had the select tool set. If I wanted to cover that up, I just hit Control-Z to go back so I had my selection. I had where the light one was. I'm going to hit Control-I to invert that, and I can just come paint back over these black sections, and that should fill that in. Alright, got my tunnels. The next thing I want to do is add a pool of water in over here. I'm going to put this pool actually underneath the tunnels in the layer. And we'll come pick a blue color, grab a paintbrush, size is pretty good, and we're just going to come put in a blue blurb for our pool here of water. I want this to look like it's not just land and then water. I want it to look like it enters in at shallower water and it gets deeper. So I'm going to select that object, and with that selected specifically, I'm going to come to blur and do a bit of a Gaussian blur on this. If I just had the whole layer selected, it would allow that blur to spread out across the tunnel flooring, which may give the effect you want, but it may not. So depending on how many pixels you get, that gets really thin. I don't want it quite that much, more about right in here. Let's zoom in and see how that looks. Now I want to add a little bit of a edge to this, similar to what I did on the walls. Let's go with the white. Dark works too, but let's go with the white. I like that look. And then maybe after that we could add another thin black. Let's see what that would look like. There we go, I like that. So by just adding a couple outlining layers to your objects, you can kind of help them stand out a little bit. Just for fun, I'm going to grab a paintbrush here and make this a lot smaller size. Like 10, and let's make this color a little bit darker. I'm going to add just some wavy lines in here. You know, that's not as dark as I want. I want a little bit darker than that and a little bit smaller. There we go. Just in case there's any question that this was water. And there might be something in there you should be scared of. And I'm going to blur this just a little bit, not a lot. You don't want it to hurt your eyes, but I'm not using a tablet to draw these on. Some of the programs I'll use, when I'm drawing with the tablet, you can turn on smooth strokes. It'll take out some of the rough edges. But this I just did quickly with the mouse. Let's see if we multiply. Can turn it down just a little bit. Alright, happy enough with that. Next thing we want is a door. And I have a whole folder full of tiles and assets and things that I've downloaded from other websites. I think the Dungeon channel is a place where I've gotten a lot of assets from if I need to grab stone walls or grass plains or buildings or all kinds of things. I can grab them from there. In this case, we're just going to go ahead and just draw a door in here, just to make it kind of simple. So we need to pick a color for our door. Let's go more of a brownish hue. I'm a little bit colorblind, so I can't always tell the red-green colorblind, so I can't always tell exactly what it's going to look like to everybody else, but it looks like a good enough color to me. Let's make this door a little bit thicker. We're going to go 20 pixels, and I'm going to put him above my tunnels. This door is going to be here. Move it around just a little bit. Stick them right there. And we'll add kind of a round knob to one side to make it look like that's where the hinges are at. And let's give it just a black outline to make it stand out. And if I was trying to make this look even better, I might go in and add some more texturing to it to make it look like wood instead of just a blown blurb. But for now, it's good enough. Now, my players are coming through this tunnel. I don't want them to see what's beyond this door initially. One thing I'll mention, if I was going to load this map into Roll20, I wouldn't have put this door in here. Any kind of object or tables or things like that that the players might manipulate in Roll20, I'll just add in as its own object there. But for play-by-post, I need it in my map. But I do want to keep it on its own layer so that when my player comes and says, I kick the door in, I can grab it on the map and rotate it around and say, all right, the door's kicked in, as an example. But I don't want my players to see what's back there, so I'm going to add a layer and call it Fog of War. And this I'm just going to grab a big black brush. And I'm just filling everything I don't want them to see until they actually get over here. Until they open that door. And I might have a post where they've opened the door and they're looking at it before they've gone all the way down the tunnel. So I might want to erase some of that Fog of War. So if I just come change this layer to be a little bit lighter, it makes it so I can see pretty easily what's blacked out and what isn't. I can say, okay, they're probably able to see about that far down the tunnel. Change the opacity of the layer back up. And there I've modified my Fog of War for the next post. I'll go ahead and put that back for now. Now I'm going to save this map in the paint.net format, which is going to keep all of my layers for me. And hit save, replace it. Now this is not an image format in and of itself, so I can't take this and share that file. But I have it in here if I need to come and edit something. Or if I've got a player that's, like I said, kicks down the door, I need that on a separate layer, I can come in and modify that. But to share it, I need to save it as just a straight image format. The grid lines we've done as a PNG file to preserve the alpha channel. But for actually posting it when we've got our final format, I want to use a JPEG just because it has better compression. so that it's a much smaller file format. So I will save this as a JPEG with the same name. And especially if we're in combat, I'm going to end up with a bunch of these. And so I will add on an extension at the end of these, like underscore round 0 or round 1, whatever round we are, just so that I have some distinction between each saved JPEG. So this is going to come out about 352 kilobytes, which is pretty small, but a lot of that's because a lot of this is black space. If it wasn't all black, if it was very detailed, this would be a much larger file. This is going to flatten it for me, and then that image file is what I would take and upload to RPG Crossings and share with my players. But I want to come back to just undo the saving, don't flatten it, or open up back the paint.net file to get my layers in here so that I can come and manipulate things later on. So here's the map. The next video we'll be populating this map with some of our players and some of the monsters and that kind of thing.